Hi, I'm Pastor Rick Carter, Assistant to the Bishop of South Carolina. It is a blessing to bring greetings to you from Bishop Jenny Abisher and the South Carolina Synod staff. If you are watching this presentation, it is because your congregation is about to go through the call process. It is our prayer that through this presentation, you will learn and discover the steps of the call process, from interim transition to calling the pastor. Some things that you will need to know. First, visit the South Carolina Synod website, scsynod.com. Look for the call process. There you will also find not simply this video, but also the transition packet and a copy of this PowerPoint itself. You will want both of those. With the PowerPoint, there are places in which, once you open, that you can click to go to the links necessary as you move through the call process. We hope that this presentation will be helpful for you as you journey through this intriguing and spirit-led time of calling a new pastor or deacon. God bless. It is important whenever you begin to make certain that there is a healthy exit of the current rostered leader. A healthy exit begins when the pastor, deacon, shares a letter of resignation with the council and then congregation. The congregation council accepts the rostered leader's letter of resignation. Once that occurs, the congregation council will share that they have received a letter of resignation from the pastor or deacon with the congregation and with the bishop's office of the South Carolina Synod. The council letter should include acceptance of the letter of resignation, expressions of gratitude for the rostered leader and family, the last date the rostered leader will serve the congregation, a copy of the letter of resignation, and any plans for a farewell event if known. Ending well is very important. This process applies to all pastors and deacons. So it will be important to determine the last Sunday and last workday. Plan the celebration. Certify parish records. Review compensation. And finalize any financial commitments, for example, vacation time owed. Complete the Excel spreadsheet that can be found here through this link on current compensation and submit this to the bishop's office. Contact Portico with end date, set up exit interview, receive keys and passwords, and remember, celebrate the partnership. Conversation with the bishop's office. The council president will be responsible for communicating with the bishop's office. Early steps in the process. Bishop's office provides a transition packet. Bishop's office works with you, the church council president, to schedule supply pastors for 2 to 6 weeks after the pastor's last Sunday. Council president completes and returns transition packet. The bishop's office reviews the transition packet. The interim appointment. The bishop's office appoints the interim. Council president meets with interim to review benchmarks, additional ministries to be accomplished, and finalize contract. Interim is introduced to council. Council and interim sign contract and submit to bishop's office before the interim begins. Note, it is important that the contract be signed by council, interim, and bishop's office before interim begins. The interim process. These are steps to guide you through the interim process. The interim process lasts until you have called your next pastor or deacon. Congregation welcomes interim. Council, interim, and bishop's office coordinates date for installation. The interim pastor, through word and sacrament, teaching and pastoral visitation, tends to the spiritual needs of the congregation. The interim pastor also works with the council to lead the congregation in discussions of any specific issues which need to be addressed during the interim time. For example, leadership, stewardship, faith formation, unresolved conflicts, changing community dynamics, etc. This will be ongoing during the entire interim process. The congregation's history and God's call to mission. After the interim pastor and congregation have had some significant time to get acquainted and begin ministry together, they will reach out to the bishop's office to schedule an appointment with council to discuss next steps in the call process. This period of significant time varies in length and includes the interim pastor leading the congregation in the reflection of their history, clarifying God's call and mission for the congregation, and continued work in resolving any issues and working on administrative benchmarks. The interim pastor serves as a resource to the congregation as they clarify God's call and their mission. Note, the interim pastor's involvement in the call process itself is limited to clarifying messages and instructions from the bishop's office. The call process. Steps to guide you in the call process. The bishop's office meets with church council. Meeting date is set. Next steps of the call process are reviewed. This would include how to conduct the Congregational Vitality Survey, or CVS, and how to complete a ministry site profile, the MSP. Congregational Vitality Survey. The council follows written instructions and conducts CVS with congregation. After the bishop's office receives the results of the CVS, a Zoom appointment will be scheduled with the council to review the results. Receiving results can take up to 6 weeks. The council, in coordination with the bishop's office, schedules a congregational event to share the results and answer any questions. The bishop's office will lead this event. Note, again, the interim pastor's involvement is to be present and supportive, and as follow-up, help the council process the information and focus with the congregation on growth areas. Ministry site profile. The church council completes the ministry site profile. Council has the option to appoint a task force to work on the MSP on their behalf. At least one council person should be included. You may click here to use this link to guide you through completing your MSP. You will create your own passcode for your congregation. Please keep this on file in the church office for future reference. The task force will want to take some questions from the MSP and share them with small groups within the congregation to get the fullest answers possible. The information that you have gathered through the CVS will also contribute to the completion of your MSP. Call committee appointed. The council appoints call committee following the congregation's constitution. The council president sends a copy of the MSP to the bishop's office and to the call committee. The call committee reviews the MSP together. The research process belongs to the bishop's office and includes ongoing prayer, reviewing rostered minister profiles, conversations with other bishops for those outside of the synod, conversations with pastors about their interest and availability, and reviewing compensation needs. The bishop's office will set a meeting with the call committee once the research is complete. The call committee. Purpose of the call committee. The call process is a deeply spiritual process. The call committee's goal is to work together to bring a recommendation for pastoral leadership to the church council. The call committee will use prayer, interviews, visits, and deep listening to serve on behalf of the congregation in discerning the best recommendation possible for a partnership between this congregation and the next pastor. The call committee will work with the bishop's office, who recommends pastors and deacons for interviews for this call. Makeup of the call committee. The church council appoints or elects the call committee based on the congregation's constitution. The committee should be a cross-section of active members of the congregation. The congregation council will report the call committee's contact information to the bishop's office. Expectations of the call committee. The entire call committee will need to be present at all meetings, barring any last-minute emergencies, and able to maintain appropriate levels of confidentiality, discernment, and maturity. The council names a chair of the call committee to lead the meetings and communicate with the bishop's office. A secretary can be designated by the council to record the actions of the committee. The council informs the congregation who is serving on the committee. The interim pastor installs the call committee and prays for their work throughout the process. Work of the call committee. Chair of the call committee contacts bishop's office. Introductions are made with the bishop's office. Following research, a meeting is set with the call committee to share information about available candidates. It is the goal of the bishop's office to give the call committee profiles of the top 3 matches for this call. Interviewing candidates. The call committee chair contacts the candidates with 48 hours of meeting with bishop's office to make an introduction. The call committee will coordinate available meeting dates on their calendars for interviews with the candidates. A first interview with each candidate should be scheduled within 2 weeks. This can be done by Zoom or in person. Feedback on this interview should be given to each candidate by the chair of the call committee within 2 weeks of the interview. This feedback needs to be shared with the bishop's office. Going deeper and a second interview. The call committee schedules a time to visit each of the candidates within their worship setting. This can be done in person or using video streaming technology. Call committee gives feedback to candidates within 1 week of visiting worship. The call committee determines which candidates they want to interview for a second time. The call committee communicates with any of the candidates whose names they are returning. This communication is by phone and in writing, copied to the bishop's office. The call committee shreds any paperwork they have on those candidates. Occasionally, even a third interview is helpful. Timeliness of communication is essential. Primary candidate recommended. Call committee determines who they would like their primary candidate to be. Call committee chair asks pastor, deacon to be primary candidate. Once all parties agree to primary candidate status, it is understood that neither the candidate or the call committee are interviewing others. Primary candidate status must be reported to the bishop's office. Note, if a primary candidate is not selected from the 3 candidates given, the call committee may request additional candidates from the bishop's office. Executive Council. Call committee chair sets up a meeting with the primary candidate and Executive Council to discuss compensation. Council president or treasurer complete Synod Excel spreadsheet that can be found here based on primary candidate's years of experience. Primary candidate also completes this Excel spreadsheet. This will be the starting place for Executive Council and primary candidate to finalize the compensation package. Here is the link to our Synod compensation guidelines. The Church Council. Following Executive Council meeting, the primary candidate is introduced to the entire council. Call committee sits in on this meeting where council interviews the primary candidate and primary candidate interviews council. Primary candidate and call committee are excused while the council discerns and votes. Congregation council calls congregational meeting to vote on candidate per their constitution. Council is in communication with the bishop's office about the date of meeting. Meet and greet. Council may wish to arrange for a meet and greet fellowship drop-in. This allows the congregation to also meet the candidate being recommended for vote. The call. Council recommendation to congregation. Written notification of congregational meeting to congregation and bishop's office following the guidance of your constitution is imperative. Congregation votes. 2 written votes are taken. Vote to call, vote on compensation. The total number of eligible voters is recorded. Record vote to call. Total yes, total no, 2/3 vote required to extend call. Record vote on compensation. Total yes, total no. Simple majority vote required to pass. Call accepted. Report all numbers to primary candidate and to the bishop's office. Primary candidate has 30 days to accept or decline the call. Call begins. Pastoral candidate determines and reports start date to council and the bishop's office. The pastor or deacon will need to give 4 to 6 weeks notice to their current congregation. Concluding the interim process. Steps to guide you in concluding the interim process. The interim process lasts until you have called your next pastor or deacon. Now that you have extended a call to your new pastor or deacon, it is time to conclude the interim process. Determine last Sunday and last workday. Plan celebration. Certify parish records. Review compensation and finalize any financial commitments, for example, vacation time. Contact Portico with end date. Set up exit interview. Receive keys and passwords, and celebrate the partnership. For more resources, please visit scsynod.com.